Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Today in the rLounge, it's a modern-day Cinderella, except the glass slipper is replaced with a mansion and the wicked stepmother's schemes involve squatting in said mansion. Mama hated me because I looked like Bio Dad. 20 years later, I own a huge mansion and she wants me back. I, 21 female, have faced the worst punishment for resembling my bio dad. I'm a result of my mom's affair. My mom was married to my stepdad for 10 years. She had 3 daughters, Mindy, 26 female, Cece, 24 female, and I, 21 female. Stepdad didn't know that I was not his child. As I grew older, I looked more and more like my bio dad, and my stepdad got suspicious of my paternity. My older sisters looked like mom, so stepdad never questioned their paternity, but when I grew up looking very different from anyone in the family, he ran a paternity test on all 3 children. Mom's infidelity came out. Only the eldest daughter was of stepdad, and the rest 2 of our DNA didn't match his. Mom then confessed that the fathers of all 3 children were 3 different men. Stepdad served her divorce. He gave the child support for only his daughter, Mindy, and for Cece and I, Mom had to work hard. Mom loved Mindy and Cece unconditionally because they looked like her. She hated me because I uncovered her truth. As a child, I never understood her wrath on me. She was cheerful and loving with my half-sisters, but with me, she would only be grumpy and rude. I don't remember one happy moment with Mom. The sad part was I didn't know the reason until much later, and when I got to know the reason, I was shattered. The truth made everything much worse. First, it gave me an identity crisis, and second, now I know the reason for my mom's hatred towards me, but I cannot do anything to fix it. Now I couldn't even complain about my mom's indifference towards me. She said Cece's dad and my dad refused to take her responsibilities, but at least Cece looked like Mom, so it didn't hurt her to provide for Cece. But I looked like my bio dad, and it made her resent me. Mom and half-sisters would gaslight the situation and blame me for their troubled life. I was being belittled openly, not only by my mom, but also by my sisters. Mindy called herself the legitimate one. She would call me names and blame me for her parents' divorce. Even Cece would mock me that I looked like my bio dad, and I was the reason that tore the family apart. She was like, "Why couldn't you look like Mom? That could have saved us from getting abandoned by Dad." As if it was in my control to decide how to look. As a child, I grew up hating myself, hating my blue eyes because they had brown eyes like Mom, hating my nose, hating my lips, hating my every bit of existence. The indifference continued for ages. I hardly got any new clothes. I grew up wearing Mindy's and Cece's clothes. Mom never bought any new toys for me, and neither was I allowed to play with my sister's toys. I was the unpaid servant of the house. I would have to bring them water and food from the kitchen, drop their plates into the sink, do their laundry, and even make their bed sometimes. The only good thing Mom did to me was send me to school. It was a community school, but at least she got me educated. I ran away from home when I was 13, but the cops found me and they dropped me back at Mom's. I told them I didn't want to go back home, and they would not listen. My mom sobbed in front of them that she was a single mom taking care of 3 daughters and I was just a troubled kid, jealous of my sisters. I listed down all the tortures I had been through. The cops asked me if I was physically tortured, and I said no. The cops stopped noting my words. My mom said to the cops, "See, that's why I told you. She is a troubled kid, jealous of her sisters and nothing more." They didn't consider emotional exploitation as a crime. They patted me and asked me to be a good kid and left. After that, Mom and half-sisters started hating me even more because I tried to report them to the cops. I can't explain how miserable it was. Staying at home became unbearable, so I took up part-time jobs. I babysat for neighbors, mowed lawns, worked at video stores, and did all sorts of jobs to keep myself away from the toxic family. Working outside was better than free labor at home. By then, I had become rebellious. I was earning money. I stopped taking their BS. I stopped eating at home and got my own food. Life got better after that because now I was able to own some of the stuff that my sisters had, and sometimes I bought better clothes than them. Cece got softer to me after that, but the older one, Mindy, was still terrible. She would tear my dresses, break my makeup, and even throw my stuff out of jealousy. I had no choice but to stand there and take it. I wanted to save more money and run away from home, but my boss at the video store advised me to complete my high school so that I could get better jobs. He said his son worked at a recruitment firm and would help me get a sales job after I finished school. So I put my head down and studied for my high school. The day I graduated from high school, I packed my stuff and left. I got a job in sales, and from there, I picked up and worked hard to make a decent living. Mom wanted to be back at home. She showed up at my workplace a couple of times and asked me to move back home, but I refused. It was not out of love, but for money. She said that instead of paying rent and living outside, I could pay her the rent and live with them. I laughed on her face. Living there for free was a nightmare, and you think I'm going to pay to live with you all? You must be joking. I wanted to meet my bio dad, but Mom wouldn't tell me about him. I asked Cece if she knew about her dad. She said Mom told her that her dad didn't want to meet her, so better not contact him. Mom told me the same thing. I was suspicious that it couldn't be true, so I kept pestering her to tell me about my dad, but she is an awful woman and doesn't give in to any sort of pressure. 2 years back, she defaulted on her mortgage and needed money urgently. She reached out to me to borrow some money. I said I would give her the money only if she told me who my dad was. She told me his name and nothing more. I asked her for his address. She said he didn't want me to get in his life, so no point in contacting him. I told her I wouldn't give her the money until she gave me all the details I needed. She then gave me his address. It was like 30 hours by road. If I took flights, I would need 2 connecting flights. I saved up for the flight and then showed up at the address only to find it was the wrong address. I went back home and fought with my mom. I told her I would report her for not revealing my paternal details. She told me she was reluctant to give me his address because his family didn't know about me and my visit would ruin his life. She tried to guilt trip me into thinking that I was wanting to be a homewrecker. After a lot of fighting matches, this time she gave me his office address, which was 4 hours away, but she kept insisting that I don't visit him because he didn't want me in his life. She was like, "Why do you want to humiliate yourself? He's going to throw you out. He doesn't want to see your face." I didn't listen to her and took a bus and showed up at his workplace. When I finally met him, the moment was so surreal. I didn't have to introduce myself to him. He saw me and said, "My girl." He hugged me. That was the tightest hug I ever got from a family member. I got to know something that blew my mind. My bio dad was paying his child support for all these years. Mom deliberately gave me his wrong address so that I didn't get to know the truth. She has been feeding lies to both of us. She told my bio dad that I hated him and didn't want to meet him. It was true that his family didn't know about me. He told me he was married for 40 years and had 2 grown-up sons. He loved his wife and didn't want to mess up things. My mom used that to blackmail him for money and took child support as well. He said we could meet outside and he could even provide for me if I wanted, but he didn't want to disclose about me to his family. I didn't have a good feeling that he didn't want to accept me openly, so I never met him after that. I was disheartened. He sent me several emails after that, but I never responded. Almost 6 months ago, he showed up at my workplace. He apologized and said he wanted to make things up for me. I said he didn't have to do anything for me. I don't need anyone now. I'm not 13 anymore. He said after meeting me, he didn't feel good about hiding me anymore and confessed everything to his wife and children. His sons are grown up and have moved out, so they didn't mind it much. However, his wife is in shock and they are seeking therapy together. He handed me a paper which turned out to be an ownership document of a mansion. He said that's the only thing he could do to cover up for his mistakes. I asked him if his family knew about this. He said yes, they knew. He has paid for his son's college and they are doing well for themselves. He has also left some trust funds for them and a house for their mother. And he gave his mansion to me. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know he was well-to-do. I didn't want his money. Otherwise, I would have also blackmailed him and extorted money for the last 2 years as Mom did for 20 years. I told him how badly I had been treated my whole life because I looked like him. He said sorry for putting me through this. He had no idea that I was going through all of that because Mom had been feeding him a different story. He said he was giving the house to me to secure my future and that he owed it to me as a father. I was overwhelmed by his gesture. I didn't tell anyone about the house. Of late, I was thinking of getting into college. I always wanted to be a college graduate, but money was a big constraint. Now that I had a mansion, I thought of putting it on lease and using that money for college. That's how my mom got to know that my bio dad gave me a mansion. She is now running behind me all sweet to get a share in the property. She is gaslighting me by saying that she is my mother and she had to undergo a divorce because of me, so I had to give her a share. When I denied it, she threatened to sue me because she had a right to my bio dad's property. You see, I don't have any understanding of laws and rules around property and inheritance whatsoever. I'm guessing she can't have it, but sometimes the law works in a funny way in the States. I don't have money to hire a lawyer until the lease money comes in, so if anyone has any idea about all this, kinda help. Yeah, you can call me dumb, but I need help. Thanks in advance. Your mom's got some nerve, doesn't she? After treating you like the black sheep of the family for years, suddenly she wants a piece of the pie now that she knows about the mansion? Talk about a change in tune. Gaslighting and manipulation seem to be her specialties. And as for your bio dad, well, let's just say he's got some serious making up to do. It's all well and good that he's finally come around and confessed to his family, but handing you a mansion? That's one heck of a guilt trip present. But hey, At least now you've got some options. Leasing out the mansion for college funds sounds like a solid plan. And as for your mom's threats to sue you, well, she's barking up the wrong tree if you ask me. But hey, I'm no legal expert either. Maybe it's time to invest in a crash course on property law or start asking around for some legal advice. After all, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to dealing with manipulative family members and their sudden interest in your newfound wealth. Update 1. Oh, I tell you, money works in a funny way. By the way, thanks for helping me out. I thought Reddit is for fun, but there are some really amazing people who genuinely help others. Like you all said in the comments, my mom can't claim a share in a house that was given to me by my dad. So the next time she came charging at me for the share, I went nuclear on her. She said she would sue me for this. I challenged her to do whatever she wanted. She cannot do anything except yell. She screamed like a wounded lion. After the last confrontation with Mom, there was silence for a long time. I was not in touch with them. I sometimes bump into Cece. She works in the same block as me. Seeing how my luck played out for me after meeting my bio dad, Cece also forced Mom to reveal her dad's identity. Sadly, her dad turned out to be a German man who had moved back to his country. He used to be our neighbor for a few years. He had rented out a room in our neighbor's house. He was a student back then and knocked up Mom. After he got to know that Mom was pregnant and would ask him for child support, he fled. Cece contacted him through email and he confessed everything. They're in touch, but Cece is sad that she didn't get any benefit after discovering her dad. Makes me wonder if she wanted her dad or hit a jackpot. I hired an agency to get me a tenant for my mansion. 6 days back, someone from the agency called me. He said he brought a tenant to check out the mansion and they found 2 women living there. I was horrified. They said they were the owners. They fought with the tenants and chased them out. The agent told me that he had sent 2 to 3 prospective tenants during the last month, but mysteriously, they all ghosted him after visiting the mansion. I asked him to send the pictures of those 2 women. They were none other than Mom and Mindy. I rushed to the place. It was an hour away from where I lived. Without saying a word, I started throwing their stuff out. They tried to stop me and kept saying, "Wait, we can explain, please hear us out." I screamed that I didn't want to listen to the squatters. It was 2 versus 1. It was a very peaceful neighborhood. The neighbors heard the chaos and called the cops. I didn't carry the house documents with me, but the agent had the copies, so he showed it to the cops. The cops chased them out, but also asked me to deploy security at the place. I asked them if I could get a restraining order against them. The cops said it was not easy because Mom and Mindy had no previous felonies registered under their names. It was their first time nuisance, so they can get away with it. I called up my dad and told him everything. Of course, I didn't have the money yet to deploy a security. He has taken the matter to himself. He said he would be installing more cameras across the house. There was just 1 installed until now. He said he would get a tenant for me and that I don't have to deal with it anymore. That was such a relief because I had no idea how tenant agreements worked, etc. I have not heard from the squatters since then, but let's see how long it's going to be like this. I'm sure they're going to come back. I'll update the thread if something develops, but thanks for putting up with me. Shake my head. I guess they figured since they couldn't claim a share of the mansion legally, they might as well try to claim it just by moving in. Talk about audacity. But hey, at least you showed them who's boss with your impromptu eviction party. Who needs a judge's gavel when you've got a determined homeowner armed with righteous anger, right? And kudos to your dad for stepping in like a knight in shining armor, installing more cameras, and getting a tenant sorted out. Now that's what I call parental support, even if it is a bit belated. Update 2. Hello all. Sorry for not updating it often. Life has been busy in college. Yeah, a lot has happened over the last few months. Let me get straight to it. 2 weeks later, to the last incident, Mom and Mindy showed up at my door again. This time they looked miserable. They said they were homeless. Mom lost her job and they defaulted on 2 months of the rent, so the owner locked them out. They said they had nowhere to go, so they went to the mansion to live there. After getting kicked out from that property, they have been living here and there, but now no one is ready to let them in. They sobbed and requested me to let them live in the mansion for a month until they put their lives together. I was tired after a long day. I didn't want to deal with them. I told them that Dad was looking after the property now and I was out of this, so I won't be able to help them. They requested that I speak to Dad and let them in. They pestered me so badly that I lost my crap. Mom was recalling the favor she did to me. She was like, "I raised you for 18 years. Can't you do this for me? I raised you for 18 years and this is how you pay me back? This is how you treat your mom who raised you single-handedly?" I screamed at her, "Yes, you raised me, but not as a daughter, but as a housemaid. I was no more than a servant for 3 of you. Did you ever get me new clothes or any stuff for that matter? Everything I owned was passed on to me by Mindy or Cece. I always got the leftover food. I survived on the stale food of last night while you all ate the fresh food. If there were 3 slices of anything, you 3 would eat, and I would just get the side salad or the ketchup. I did most of the household chores, yet you never showed any love or care for me. Even when I was sick, you were mean to me. Only when my condition worsened, you used to get me over-the-counter meds. Once, I even got an allergy because of that, remember? It could have been fatal, and I could have died because of unprescribed meds, but you cared the least about my existence. This is how you raised me. The funny part is, it was not even my fault. How is it my fault that I looked like my dad? It's your fault that you cheated on your husband. You got knocked up by random men, and I had to suffer. I gave her the yellings of her life. My blood was boiling with rage. The hatred and pain which had accumulated for so many years came out like a flood. They sobbed at my rant. I broke down and howled. They came to console me, but I shooed them away. I told them to back off. They are the ones who have given me lifelong pain. They were still standing there, thinking I would cool down and give in to their demands, but I screamed at the top of my voice, "Get out! I don't want to see your effing faces." I cried so badly after they left that I felt sick the next day. I went to the doctor, took meds, and rested for a couple of days. 2 or 3 days later, I was feeling lethargic and bored. I took my car and went around the town for a drive. I passed by my mom's house and found the house was locked and some of their belongings were lying outside. I am friends with one of the girls in the neighborhood. I called her to ask what's the matter. She told me that my mom had goofed up. She had been sleeping with her landlord, and the owner's wife got to know about it. She came charging at Mom and dragged her out of the house. Mom was not paying the rent for over a year. She was trading off by sleeping with the owner. It's a small town. Everyone knows everyone's business. I hate to say this because she's my mom, but this woman is such a whore. Anyone reading this would think it is so bizarre. Trust me, it's all true. I know this is hard to believe for people having normal parents, but not everyone is blessed with a normal family. There are people like us. As I mentioned earlier, my dad took over the responsibilities of getting the tenant for the house. I used that money to get into a college. It's not a fancy one, but I am proud of myself to be able to come this far in life. Meanwhile, my mom tried to seduce my bio dad, but he chased her out and threatened to report her to the cops if she was ever found near my mansion. I haven't heard from Mom after the last outburst. Cece texts me sometimes. I got to know from her that Mindy had also abandoned Mom after marrying a guy from the next block. He was a widower with 2 kids, but had a big house and some ancestral properties. Of course, Mom has passed on her traits to Mindy. Good for them. You served them a steaming hot dish of reality with a side of, "Get the hell out of my life." Bravo, OP. And as for your mom's recent escapades, well, let's just say she's making some interesting real estate deals of her own. Who knew sleeping with the landlord could be a form of rent payment? It's like she's taking the concept of home sweet home to a whole new level of intimacy. But hey, at least you're making moves in the right direction. College, independence, and a healthy distance from the family drama. That sounds like a recipe for success if I've ever heard one. And as for Mom and Mindy, well, it sounds like they're off on their own wild adventures, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. Keep forging ahead, stay focused on your goals, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just living your best life while the rest of them stumble around in their own mess. After all, who needs a dysfunctional family when you've got a mansion of your own and the keys to your own future? What do you make of this? Thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon!